With many of the OG Avengers either MIA, KIA, or just off in space having fun with a tree and raccoon, it's time for another group of superpowered people to look after Earth. Only problem is, who are these people and where have they been all this time? Marvel's Eternals will eventually answer this when it releases, but let's get a jump start on Earth's newest defenders, not including all these other people. But before talking about each character in depth, we should have a quick history lesson on exactly who, or more accurately what, the Eternals are. In the far-off time of 1976, Jack Kirby's creations were first debuted on comic shelves when we learned that the Celestials, you've seen these guys in both Guardians of the Galaxy, and it looks like we'll see more of them in Eternals, created three distinctive races on Earth: humans, deviants, and Eternals. But as the movie's title teases, the one we're most interested in are the Eternals. From what we've seen so far, the movie will have Eternals from the second, third, fourth, and fifth generations. So let's start with the second generation. It's just Gilgamesh, or as he's also known, the Forgotten One. Or Hercules, or Samson, he's been around a very long time. And just like those iconic heroes of old, his power set is very similar. He's got superhuman strength, speed, durability, all the superhero classics, but as an Eternal, he's also got cosmic energy manipulation, along with flight, a healing factor, and the little known ability known as immortality.
Hold up. Wait a minute!
Well, with a small caveat. All Eternals are technically immortal as long as they maintain control over their bodies, but if they lost that control and get fatally wounded, they won't be able to heal from it. As one of the strongest earthly bound Eternals, with Hulk focusing more on his doctorate, that role of Earth's strongest should be taken over pretty nicely by the Forgotten One. Moving on to the third generation, let's start with Azura, who later take on the name Thena as a result of her agreement with the Olympian gods for the Eternals to be their liaisons with the humans. As you'll see with most of the Eternals, they all have similar abilities, but they tend to specialize in one. For Thena, her speed, durability, and overall fighting abilities are what make her such a threat. She also has the rare ability to teleport herself as well as others, although the process is incredibly taxing for Eternals. While using cosmic energy manipulation, she can create light, fire, and even conjure weapons if she wants to get up close and personal. She also has high-level mental abilities, allowing her to use telekinesis and telepathy to create illusions. With that impressive mix of skills and powers, it makes sense that she would also be one of only 3 Prime Eternals, which is just a fancy way of saying that she's been the leader of the Earthbound Eternals. Now let's take a look at the third and most recent Prime Eternal, Ikaris. But unlike Thena, he didn't get his name from a similarly named Greek character. Instead, he took on his son's name as a way to memorialize him. In terms of Ikaris' standout abilities, he is by far one of the most durable and speedy. Being able to survive being completely submerged in lava and tanking hits from the likes of Red Hulk and Hercules, the actual one, not Gilgamesh, proves that even without immortality, it would take a lot to put him down for the count. He's also been known to fly at speeds clocking at around 850 miles per hour, which is something that's out of most Eternal skill sets. Ikaris has fought against the Dark Celestials and even his fellow Eternal Thanos, but we'll have to see what awaits him in his upcoming big screen reveal. For our next member of the Eternals, we get to see what a more average Eternal will look like. In Ajak, we see many of the same characteristics that have been mentioned before, and various feats from battles aren't really that much different either.
That's no good.
I know, a little anticlimactic, but remember, Ajak is still going to be incredibly powerful, and not just because Salma Hayek is in the role. By being an Eternal, that still puts Ajak in the top tier of Marvel characters, but I suspect that the most interesting part of Hayek's interpretation will be her relationship with Makkari. In the comics, Ajak's role was to communicate with Celestials, but Makkari, a character who we'll get to in a little bit, was chosen instead, and that made Ajak very upset. We'll just have to wait and see how much of that animosity actually comes out in the film. Rounding out the third generation is Phastos. Much of Phastos' life is actually unknown, and due to a profound sorrow that has caused him to search for a meaning in life, he's not too keen on getting into fights, so many of his abilities and their limits are also unknown. All we really know is that Phastos has been working as somewhat of a weaponsmith throughout his time on Earth, and that his genius in those fields allow him to create whatever he needs to overcome a situation. Oh, and he likes to carry around this cool hammer that can shoot out lasers. Hopefully we get to see that too. Now on to the fourth generation, and we're going to start with Makkari. Makkari's abilities are one of the more interesting because instead of being as well-rounded as her fellow Eternals, she, originally depicted as a male in the comics, really lives by the phrase "gotta go fast" and decided to use her cosmic abilities to enhance her speed at the detriment to her other abilities. This allows Makkari to run at blinding speeds, which we got a taste of in the trailer. With that speed in the comics, Makkari has been shown to create cyclones with the flick of their wrists, as well as dash across water. Yeah, exactly like that. Although this will be the second speedster in the MCU, hopefully she'll stay around just a little bit longer. Another character with some interesting relationships is Sersi. In the comics, she not only has a romantic relationship with Ikaris, but also with Dane Whitman, aka the Black Knight. This leads to a love triangle and just awkward times all around. When it comes to her abilities, she's the most adept Eternal at matter transmutation, which just means if she wants something, she can turn almost anything she wants into it. That means she's got an unlimited supply of bagel bites, so she might technically be the most important person Earth has got on their side. Our next Eternal has gone through, let's say, an interesting change since being first created. Initially, Kingo looked over the Japanese settlement of the Eternals and grew to love the ways of the samurai. Now he's a movie star who just likes playing as a samurai.
Yeah, that makes sense.
In the MCU version, Kingo will be played by Kumail Nanjiani, and from the trailer it looks like Kingo will be trading in his katana for something with a little more Middle Eastern flair. While his powers are the same as other Eternals, Kingo actually prefers to fight without them. Depending on the upcoming threat, it remains to be seen how much of that actually transfers to the movie version. Our last member of the 4th generation that we've seen so far is Druig. Some speculate that he'll be the main villain of the movie, as his previous comic exploits have led him to try to become the leader of the Eternals by force. In the comics, he's shown to be cold, calculating, and sadistic in his search for power. All of that, coupled with the combination of his intelligence with his skills in transmutation and illusory magic, would make him a dangerous opponent, especially if the team is not together all at once. Moving on to the youngest and only Eternal from the 5th generation that we've seen so far, we're at Sprite.
Want a Sprite cranberry?
No, not that one. Unlike the crisp drink, Sprite is far more powerful than they look. Sprite is able to go toe-to-toe with Sersi in terms of their abilities in matter transmutation, as well as in their abilities to create illusions. With Sprite being so young in comparison to the other Eternals, it's very impressive to see how their powers have progressed so far, and it'll be interesting to see how far they'll go. Hopefully, Sprite doesn't lean too heavily in becoming as mischievous as another MCU character, but who's to say we can't have another trickster pranking everyone they can. And although he isn't an Eternal, this guy is way too important not to mention. Dane Whitman, who takes up the mantle of the Black Knight, has been a Marvel mainstay for decades in the comics. While he's nowhere near as powerful as any Eternal in really any metric, his skills in leadership and combat against less cosmically imbued characters is where he really makes his claim to fame. That, coupled with his ebony blade, which has been wielded by characters like Black Panther and Malekith in the comics, Black Knight is worthy enough to hang with Eternals. Not bad for a regular guy with a degree in physics. The MCU is constantly expanding and revealing new characters around each corner, and with Phase 4, that doesn't seem to be changing anytime soon. While we still don't know why the Eternals decided to just chill out while their cousin they don't like talking about decided to just drop in and snap half of the world away, I'm nonetheless extremely excited to see what this new team has in store for us later in 2021.